The venue was already shutting down when the mistake happened. Not dramatic, not loud, just a sound that didn't belong there. A staff girl dragging a plastic crate across the sticky floor. The scrape too sharp for the hour, slicing through the half-dark as the house lights numbed themselves into fading stripes. Someone in the back laughed at the noise, too high-pitched, too sudden, and it bounced off the empty bar counter like a dare. The last employees were collecting wristbands from the floor, sweeping half-melted ice, unplugging cables. No one expected anyone important to still be here. But 4 figures stood near the back exit, too close to the emergency light. Shadows cut wrong against the peeling wall. Jungkook, Jimin, Taehyung, and Namjoon. All hoodies up, all clearly trying to be no one specific. It would have worked if not for the sound that followed. A phone notification, bright and stupid in the hollow space, loud enough to make the bartender freeze mid-wipe. It wasn't even a ringtone. It was worse. The default alert tone, a chirpy ping, the kind nobody respectable keeps at full volume. The girl with the crate stopped dragging it. The bartender blinked. A security guy near the doorway looked up, confused, like he had misheard. Jungkook reached into his pocket too slow. Jimin hissed under his breath. Not words, just a noise. Taehyung turned his head away, shoulders tightening. Namjoon pressed his hand to his face, like he could physically push the moment back inside the phone. But the damage was alive now. The ping had bounced, echoed, skidded across the empty tables. The staff recognized that sound. It wasn't from their devices. It came from the group still standing there, long after closing time, long after they should have been escorted out. A girl mopping near the stage lifted her eyes first, not because she noticed who they were, but because she wanted to glare at whoever had interrupted the cleanup. Her glare didn't land. It snagged, froze. She blinked twice, expression jerking from annoyance to something unreadable, then back to annoyance because she didn't trust what she'd seen. She looked again anyway, too long, too openly. The guys didn't move. That was the problem. If they kept walking, it wouldn't have stuck. But they stopped, like they were waiting for something, or someone, and the staff felt that stillness like a wrong note. The security guard walked toward them, slow, deliberate, not suspicious yet, just irritated the way workers get when customers don't understand the night is over. Exits this way, he said, pointing with his chin, voice flat, routine. His flashlight beam twitched across the floor, caught the edge of a shoe, Jungkook's, then slid upward and hit the shape of his face. Not full. Not enough to confirm. Just enough to unsettle. The guard squinted. That was the first misstep. Not recognition. Hesitation. The kind that makes other people look up, even if they don't know why. A girl stacking cups near the corner paused with her hands midair. The DJ, packing his cables, turned his head halfway. A guy rolling beer kegs toward the back room let one drop too hard, the clang echoing like alarm bells. No one said anything. No one asked anything. But eyes were shifting, darting, adjusting. The guard exhaled, about to repeat himself, when the second mistake hit. Taehyung pushed his hood lower, too intentionally, too visibly. He tried to make it casual, a little tug, a nothing gesture, but it was wrong for the moment. Wrong for the closing lights. Wrong for the empty venue, where no one hides from employees. A girl near the bar frowned. "Why are they?" she whispered to no one, then cut herself off, cheeks tightening, like speaking had been the actual error. Jimin stepped back, only half a step, a reflex, but it made Jungkook shift his weight, and the shift made the overhead light flicker across his jawline. Not fully, not kindly, just enough to land like a glitch. Someone inhaled too sharply. A plastic cup cracked in someone's hand. Phones weren't out yet, but hands were hovering near pockets, too curious, too cautious. The guard repeated, "Exits that way." But this time it wasn't neutral. It was strained. The back door buzzed quietly as the automatic lock armed itself for the night, a mechanical whine that sounded far too loud. Jungkook turned his head slightly. Not dramatic, not a reveal, just a shift. And the girl with the mop choked on her breath. It wasn't recognition. It was shock at the possibility of recognizing someone she absolutely should not be seeing here at 2:47 a.m. inside a venue that was no longer open, in a half-lit sticky floor echo chamber meant only for staff and stragglers. A bottle rolled off a table. Someone swore under their breath. Jimin's phone buzzed again, silent this time, but the vibration skittered across the metal leg of a stool. The bartender flinched. 2 workers exchanged a look that wasn't subtle at all. And then, the third mistake snapped the night open. Namjoon spoke, quiet, calm, too calm. "Let's go," he said. Just 2 words, but his voice wasn't disguised. It was exactly the voice everyone in the room had heard before, in songs, in interviews, in commercials, in stadiums. The mop hit the floor. The bartender dropped a glass. The DJ said, "No way," under his breath. Someone near the exit gasped, tried to muffle it, failed. The security guard's flashlight slipped downward, clattering against his boot. Phones appeared, not raised, not yet, but alive. Screens lighting pockets, hands, faces. A girl touched her friend's arm, fingers trembling, whispering too fast to be coherent. One guy lifted his phone halfway, then aborted, then lifted it again. Jerky, guilty, compulsive. He wasn't even sure why he was doing it. None of them were. The lights dimmed harder as the venue fully powered down, the room sinking into a gritty half-dark where outlines were clearer than faces. Jungkook looked toward the exit, then toward the forming cluster of staff, then back at the guard. Small movements, but in the near dark, every micro gesture felt magnified, exposed, wrong. The room wasn't silent. It was messy, footsteps scraping, breaths catching, someone sniffing, someone whispering, the mop water sloshing in the bucket because the girl holding it couldn't keep her hand steady. And the question slid into the air, silent but suffocating. Why are they still here? The exit wasn't far. The crowd wasn't big. But the moment was already spiraling, pulling everyone into a space they didn't know how to stand in. Phones rose another inch. Someone stepped forward by accident. Someone else stepped back too fast. And the night didn't break. It tilted. Hard. Enough to make everyone realize something had begun that none of them could undo. The shift toward the exit should have been simple. 4 men walking out, staff stepping aside, a normal end-of-night clearance. But nothing about the moment worked normally anymore. The guard stepped backward to make space, only half a step, but his heel clipped the edge of a folded caution sign, sending it clattering to the floor in a sharp, plasticky slap that echoed too loudly in the hollowing room. Someone near the bar squeaked, then tried to cover it with a cough that sounded even worse. The lights overhead flickered again as the venue descended into its final shutdown mode, casting everything in alternating strips of shadow and washed-out white, like a broken copier spitting half-finished images across the walls. Jungkook moved first, not fast, not slow, just enough to signal that they were leaving. But the moment he took that step, a girl near the stage dropped her mop handle. It bounced, cracked against her ankle, and she swore under her breath before clapping a hand over her mouth, eyes wide, staring at them like she'd said something forbidden in church. Jimin hesitated a fraction too long behind Jungkook, and that micro delay registered with the staff like a siren. People weren't breathing right anymore. The DJ missed the pocket of his backpack twice before getting the cable stuffed in. Each failed attempt a jitter of nerves he didn't want to admit. A boy in a staff lanyard nudged a stack of stools too hard. They scraped, screeched, toppled slightly before he caught them with both arms. "Man, what are you doing?" Another staffer whispered, but it came out shaky, like his throat had tightened. Namjoon lowered his head as he walked, hood casting a deep shadow, but that only made the bartender lean forward, craning her neck, trying to see without trying to see. She mouthed something at the girl with the bucket. "Is that—" But the girl shook her head too fast, splashing gray water onto her shoes. No one cleaned it. Jimin's sleeve brushed a metal railing on the way down the small ramp toward the exit, the scrape sparking against the quiet like an alarm bell, even though it was barely a sound. Taehyung followed closely, too closely, as if the air behind them might collapse if they didn't stick shoulder to shoulder. The guard held the exit door half open, not wide, not welcoming, just ajar. But the movement of him holding it invited attention instead of ending it. A staff girl leaning by the ticket scanner whispered, "Why are they leaving through here?" to her colleague, who shrugged, then realized shrugging was too obvious and froze mid-gesture. Someone near the backroom door raised a phone to check the time, but accidentally opened the camera instead. The screen flared bright, catching the corner of Jungkook's jaw in the reflection. She panicked and flipped it downward, but too late. The light had drawn 3 sets of eyes instantly. One of the workers muttered, "Put it away," but not to her, to himself. Jungkook reached the threshold first, pausing as the guard adjusted his grip on the door, and that pause sent a ripple backward through the room. People straightening, shifting their weight, pretending to work harder than they actually were. A mop swiped too aggressively, sloshing water. A tray clattered as someone stacked glasses too quickly. The DJ zipped his bag with trembling hands, the teeth of the zipper catching twice before sealing. No one spoke directly to them. No one dared. But murmurs filtered through the air in fragmented, broken bits. "Should we? Is that actually? But why would they? This is weird. Is someone filming?" each fragment landing like a pebble tossed into a pond already too full. Taehyung glanced back for half a second, maybe checking on Jimin, maybe reacting to the noise behind them, but the look ran across the room like a bare wire. The mop girl choked on a breath again. Someone dropped a keyring. A boy stacking chairs stopped mid-lift, arms suspended stupidly in the air. The guard finally said, "You need to head out now." But the sentence wasn't confident. It was thin, stretched, an order delivered while watching for the reaction instead of commanding it. Jungkook stepped forward. The others followed. The space tightened. Phones hovered. Not lifted, not raised. Hovering. Ready. The exit door creaked open wider, and the night outside felt colder than it should have been. Not real cold, but the kind of cold that forms when tension hits a threshold. Jungkook moved through first, and that's when the real slip happened. A girl by the bar whispered, not softly at all, "They weren't supposed to still be inside." And 3 people heard it, flinched, then pretended they hadn't. Jimin stiffened. Namjoon's jaw flexed. Taehyung lowered his head further. The staff shifted sideways instinctively, forming a crooked corridor toward the exit, like their bodies were trying to install order into something that was already unraveling. One girl started to record, not openly, just thumb on the screen, camera pointed at the floor. But when the brightness hit her face, Jungkook turned his head slightly. Only slightly. It didn't matter. The moment sliced the air cleanly. She jerked her phone back so fast she hit her hip, wincing, while her friend muttered, "Idiot," under her breath, too loud. Jungkook didn't react. He didn't need to. The room reacted for him. The guard's grip tightened on the door, shoulders squared, like he expected the space behind him to implode. The DJ stopped pretending to organize and stared openly now, guilt on his face for staring, but hunger in his eyes for confirmation. Another worker stepped away from the stack of chairs, inching closer to the path the group was taking, pretending he needed to wipe down a railing that hadn't been touched in hours. The air felt crowded, like every breath came from the same lungs. They were almost at the sidewalk, 5 steps, maybe 4, when someone from outside, a passerby, or maybe another staffer off shift, poked their head in and said, confused, "Are you guys still?" And then froze, eyes widening, lips parting in a silent, unmistakable, "Oh." That was all it took. A chain snapped. A plastic cup fell off a table, hit the ground, rolled, kept rolling, the sound stretching too long, too loud, until it bumped into Jungkook's shoe. He didn't kick it away. He didn't move. But the entire room felt the impact like a verdict. And just like that, leaving was no longer an exit. It was the beginning of something none of them had meant to be part of. The door was open, but the way out had already collapsed. The sidewalk should have swallowed them. Open air, street noise, anonymity. But instead, it trapped them like a second room with no ceiling. The door shut behind them with a soft hydraulic sigh. Too final, too deliberate. And the people outside, the few who were left lingering near the smoking area, froze like they'd walked into the wrong frame of a film. A girl leaning against the railing flicked her lighter, missed the wheel twice, and when the flame finally snapped alive, she looked up, directly at Jungkook, and the flame died in her hand. She didn't even try again. The guy sitting on the curb with a half-eaten sandwich blinked so fast it looked like he was recalibrating his vision, then dropped the sandwich without noticing it hit the concrete. A cluster of 3 friends near the trash can stopped mid-joke. One still had his mouth open in a half-formed laugh that never finished. Their eyes dragged across the 4 figures emerging from the doorway, not in awe, not in recognition, in disbelief, the kind that makes people freeze because they're afraid to be the first to react. Taehyung brushed past a loose flyer taped to the doorframe. It fluttered to the ground and landed face up with a wet slap. And for some reason, that sound made more impact than footsteps. Jimin pulled his hood lower, but the streetlight above them flickered, buzzing, giving just enough illumination to make the gesture obvious. One of the smokers let out a noise. Not a word, not a gasp, just a rough exhale that cracked halfway, like his throat had betrayed him. Someone across the street slowed their walk. Another stumbled to a stop too fast, pretending to tie her shoe while sneaking glances. Phones weren't up yet, but they were appearing. Edges of screens catching reflected light, hands hovering in pockets, fingers already curling like muscle memory. Jungkook took another step toward the curb, and the motion triggered the first real ripple. A girl dropped her vape onto the pavement, the clatter sharp, embarrassing, unmistakable. She scrambled to grab it, but her hand slipped, hitting his shoe for a fraction of a second. The contact wasn't dramatic, just a tap, but everyone saw it. Her friend hissed her name in horror. A guy muttered, "No way, no way," under his breath, pacing backward like he needed distance to process what he was seeing. Namjoon said nothing, but the way he angled his body, slightly, protectively, made someone near the bus stop whisper, "Holy shit, that's really them." Not loud, but loud enough. That was the ignition point. Heads turned. People stopped pretending they weren't watching. The air shifted, thickened, like everyone realized at the same time that whatever this was, it wasn't allowed to be happening here. Not at this hour. Not in this place. Not like this. Someone's phone slipped from their pocket and hit the ground, camera facing up, recording without intention. And the red light blinked, blinking, catching all four of them in a fractured upward angle. The girl who dropped it stared at the screen, horrified, then at Jungkook, then at the screen again. She didn't touch it. No one touched it. The recording kept going, and for the first time all night, the tension didn't come from inside the venue. It came from everywhere else. The street, the strangers, the fact that leaving had made it worse. The door behind them might as well have locked itself. They were outside now, but there was nowhere to go. The moment someone finally picked up the fallen phone, not to help, not to give it back, but to flip it over and lock the screen in a panicked, guilty swipe, the balance snapped again. The girl who had dropped it grabbed the stranger's wrist too quickly, too instinctively, blurting, "Don't!" And the sound cut through the air like she'd shouted in a church. Everyone heard it. Jungkook's steps slowed. Not stopped, slowed. And that half-second drag of motion made three people pivot toward him at once, as if choreographed entirely by accident. Jimin brushed past a parking sign, and it rattled violently, metal scraping metal, making two boys near the bus stop jerk in unison, one of them blurting, "Yo, chill," to no one specific. Taehyung stepped sideways to avoid the sudden shift of bodies, but the move only drew more attention. A sharp silhouette under the flickering street lamp. Namjoon tried to redirect them toward the edge of the sidewalk, but someone else moved the same direction at the same time, blocking the path unintentionally, then stumbling back, muttering sorry, in a voice too small, too stunned. A girl wearing a glittery jacket raised her phone halfway up, not on purpose, just habit, and froze when she realized what angle she created. She tried lowering it, but her hand shook so much that the lens bobbed visibly, catching Jungkook's reflection in the storefront window behind him. A man in a delivery vest rode past on an e-bike, turned his head, braked too hard, and skidded sideways with a rubbery shriek. He didn't fall, but the sound made everyone flinch like a firework had gone off. Someone gasped. Someone else laughed. Wrong, ugly, misplaced, then clamped both hands over their mouth. The group at the trash can spread out, not approaching, not retreating, just widening like water around an object they couldn't absorb. Jungkook tried stepping forward again, but a girl accidentally mirrored him at the exact same moment, and their movements collided visually, even though they didn't touch. She jerked back so fast she hit her shoulder against the wall, whispering, "Oh my God," like it was a confession. The sidewalk wasn't a sidewalk anymore. It was a warped funnel of bodies, breaths, screens, half-swallowed reactions. Every attempt to move only spawned another mistake, another noise, another misread gesture. And somewhere in the middle of it, not loud, not dramatic, someone finally whispered the question that everyone else had been avoiding. "Why are they here?" The words didn't spread. They landed. Heavy, wrong, permanent. The kind of question that doesn't calm anything. It detonates it. The question didn't echo. It just lodged itself in the air, and something in the crowd tightened around it, like everyone suddenly realized they were part of a moment that could not be undone. Jungkook shifted his weight, smallest movement possible, but three phones rose at once, not high, not confident, just enough to create a shimmer of screens aimed in his direction. Jimin reached for Taehyung's sleeve, barely touching it, but even that tiny gesture made a girl near the curb gasp like she'd witnessed something forbidden. Namjoon stepped forward, trying to carve a line through the mess, but a boy with a backpack panicked and moved the same way, blocking him unintentionally, then stuttering out an apology he couldn't finish. Someone dropped a can. It rolled across the concrete and hit Jungkook's shoe again. Not hard, just enough to make people hear the contact and freeze like they'd crossed a boundary. A man at the bus stop finally lifted his phone fully, arm outstretched, no more pretending. And that single boldness infected the others instantly. Screens lit up, angles sharpened, bodies shifted closer. Not coordinated, not hungry, just drawn by a force none of them would admit to. A girl stumbled forward, caught herself on the lamppost, then snapped her head up as if she'd been caught trespassing. Two strangers whispered at the same time, and their voices tangled into a harsh, broken thread of disbelief. Jungkook didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence was the center of the malfunction. The sidewalk crowded itself tighter, wrong shapes in wrong places, strangers bumping shoulders, stepping on each other's feet. trying to look casual, while every part of them screamed that the situation was spiraling. And then, the final break. Someone called out. Not loud, not soft, just clear enough to carry. "Look over here!" No name, no request, just a command flung into the air. The boys froze. The crowd surged. Phones tilted. Light hit faces at awful angles. Nobody stepped in to stop it. Nobody pretended to. The night didn't resolve. It folded inward, messy and irreversible, leaving every person on that sidewalk with the same sharp, sick realization. Whatever this was, whatever it meant, none of them were supposed to see it. And now they had.